Little disclaimers before we actually start with the build, because I already know that there's going to be that one person, that one comment that's going to say you're not actually one-shotting the bosses, you're two-shotting them. Which, just to clarify, dude, technically we are one-shotting the bosses. The thing is that this is a skill that we are building for. This is what we are building this this build on. You should only be allowed to use this one skill once. But we are using a support gem that allows us to cast it twice. More often than not, yes, you are going to one-shot things, but if they survive, like the couple of times that you will see in here, a second cast, it's definitely going to kill them. It's not going to deal as much damage as the first one, because the first one is the one that we are actually preparing to deal a little bit more damage. But yes, technically this is a skill that you can only use once, and it has a cooldown. But since we're using a support gem, you're able to cast it twice. So yes, it's just one cast of a skill that we are building so that we can enhance the damage, so to speak, if you want to call it that way. I also wanted to mention that all of this gameplay that you are seeing in the background, it's from the cruel difficulty, and I was not over leveled. I was just recording this as I was cruising through the cruel difficulty. And I also would like to mention as well that while I do think that it is a little bit too overpowered for you to be able to one-tap bosses, I'm hoping that they are not going to nerf this. Definitely, if they are, I advise for you to start abusing this thing as much as you can, because it's very rewarding and it's very powerful. But I do want to mention that this is something that it requires quite a bit of preparation. It requires quite a bit of a setup. You do require for you to have a knowledge of your character. You need to be making concessions. This is not something that you're going to like not have any kind of trade-off like the many broken builds that might be out there, where you can just be doing like things and things explode without you having to make any concessions. In here, we to some extent like we are losing things to be able to maximize this one thing that we have right here, and it requires quite a bit of preparation. That being said, on that regard of the preparation, let's actually begin talking about the build on itself for the passive skill tree that I have for you right here. This is how you should be setting up your character, and it is going to take quite a while. As for the ascension, we are Titan, and I advise for you to take the percentage in strength as soon as you can, as well as the hulking form, because this is going to give you plus 50% increase effect of the small passive skills. This is very, very important if you want to be able to use the main aspect of our build, which is going to be Giant's Blood. Essentially what this allows you to do is that you can dual wield two-handed axes, maces and swords. There are no axes and swords right now in the game, but the maces, you can dual wield two-handed maces. But it's going to triple the attribute requirements for weapons. So this is going to require for you to have quite a lot of investment, and I can tell you that much, that as soon as you progress into the game, there's going to be some certain situations where the stat requirement is just going to be too much that you're not going to be able to wield it. So you might actually start thinking, is this actually worth it? But that is why we are stretching so much these stat points in here. They are going to be very, very important for you to take as much strength as possible. You can have beef in here for a plus 25 strength. Right now with the weapons that I'm using, I'm fine, but you can also take the ones that are in here that are going to give you 36 more strength. Those are very, very useful. But one more thing that you are going to be needing is this one down here, the all attributes. This is going to give you plus 4 to all attributes, and this is going to, what really interests us in here is that we want to have the 10% increase attributes, but furthermore than that, we want the reduced attribute requirements. Because if you combine this with our Ascension class skill, this is going to be a total of 18% reduced attribute requirements. Meaning that once you reach level 40, 50, 60, once you are on the cruel difficulty, you are going to be able to bypass those high requirements for the weapons to be used. Once you have managed to get this is when you can start building into damage, which is going to be this tree right here. This is 200 damage, this is also 200 damage, this right here, this is dual wielding damage, and this right here, it's more increased melee damage. Beyond this point, you should only be focusing on damage. And as for survivability, well, for survivabilities, thankfully enough, we don't actually need that much of resistances. Yes, I know that resistances are very important, but we are bypassing that because of the high strength that we have. Since we are just aiming to have so much strength, our health pool is just so huge, and we are going to be using some things like I like to be using Leech. It was recently buffed. I haven't tested it because of that right now, but it just focus yourself on more melee damage as you can. This is how your character should be looking like, and this is what I'm building for my endgame. Now, let's get into the juicy. How are we actually one-shotting things? This is one thing that you are going to get. Once you get access to level 13 skills, we have the Hammer of the Gods right here. What this does is that it basically casts a Hammer of the Gods that is going to fall into the ground. It deals tremendous amounts of damage. But just this thing, it's not going to be enough for us to kill things. We are using our support gems right here. I can't stress enough how important it is for you to have somewhat of a preparation. We are going to have somewhat of a combo in here, but the support gems that you want to have in here is exploit weakness. So that basically what this does is that every time that you deal damage to an enemy that its armor is broken, it's going to increase the 50% more damage. You're no longer going to deal armor damage with this skill, but if you broke the armor of an enemy, then you are going to deal 50% more damage. And then we have the concentrated effect. This comes from an intelligence support gem. It reduces by 40% the area of the damage, but also increases it deals 40% more damage, but it reduces the area of effect, the AoE, by 50%. However, we do not care about the AoE being reduced because we're not using this to clear mobs. As a matter of fact, we'll discuss about what are we going to be doing for that. But essentially what you want to do is break the enemy's armor before you actually cast this thing. And then we have the second wind, which basically it allows you to have twice the skill that has somewhat of a cooldown. You're able to use it twice. So that's how this is working. It's just this one skill that is going to have 100% more increased damage, but also you can cast it a second time. Now, that being said, we also need to break the enemy's armor. So on the mace strike in here, we have the Splinter. The Splinter basically deals armor damage. So that's what we want to do. When you're fighting a boss, first you need to break the armor. And how you break the armor, it depends up to you. So for example, you can also be using Armor Breaker in here, which is going to deal more armor damage to some extent. So every time that you hit something, it's going to be like for me at least in here, it's going to be 2439 armor damage, which ideally in like a couple of hits you could be breaking enemy's armor. With that being said, it just depends on to you how you want to break the enemy's armor to get that 50% more damage in here. And then the other thing that we are going to be using is that we are going to be using the Infernal Cry, because what this does is that it basically empowers the damage that you deal with your next attack. So basically it gains 25% more damage as fire damage per 5 power of enemies in range, up to 100%. So yeah, against bosses this is just going to be 25% more damage, but ideally we are getting the base damage that the Hammer of the Gods deals. It's 2131% damage. You are increasing that by about 125%, So that is why we are dealing so much damage with this thing. That is why you are one-shotting things. Now granted, I know that this is just one single attack, right? So how do I clear up maps? Because clearing maps is also amazing. Like this combination, this setup right in here, it's going to allow you to kill bosses it's going to allow you to one-shot bosses. But this is a skill that you cannot use at your leisure. It has a huge cooldown, and you can only be getting the most out of this whenever you prepare everything as I showed you, as I told you that you prepare it. So for exploration, is this build broken as well? Yes, it is, because for exploration we are actually using our Bone Shatter right in here. There's a nice combination about Bone Shatter right here. This was actually recently buffed, so that's amazing. If you have the Herald of Ash, you deal overkill damage, and if you combine that with your Bone Shatter, that's going to deal even much more damage. And although my advice is that if you're going to be using Bone Shatter, I also advise for you to let's see, the skills options that you keep this on the I'm sorry, you're going to be using Lip Slam, because the combination overall I'm digressing way too much in here. There's a link in the description where I actually scripted a video for this build that it was precisely for that. I'll just make it shorter for you for time's sake in here. So essentially you use Lip Slam and then Bow Shatter, and because of the overkill from the Herald of Ash, you are going to be dealing much more damage. Although for Bone Shatter, you want to have the skill options that you want to be using the Lip the Lip Slam. This one right here should only be used with the second set of weapons, because the second set of weapons is going to be using a shield. More often than not, we don't have that much of a defense, so you want to have your shield with you at all times, and then when you leap the slam, you are going to have your shield with you, which is going to protect you, which is going to allow you to be able to survive through everything. And then you are going to need something very important in your weapon. Well, this could be in your weapon, it could be in rings, it could be in gear, it could be armor, it could be just quite literally anything. Life per enemy killed. Since everything is going to explode around you as soon as you use the Bone Shatter, you're going to immediately be healed. However, there's also one support gem that we are using with the Herald of Ash, which is Cannibalism. This basically gives you 4% of life every time that you killed something when you have a supported skill, so you don't really necessarily need that life from kill if you have Cannibalism, because every time that everything explodes around you, you're going to go back to full health. But if you don't have enough resistances, you can take damage before you actually use the Bone Shatter. But then again, that's why we have our shield. And if you have cool resistances, then you don't really care. So you don't really have to be worrying about healing yourself with this character. Anyways, it's really broken. It clears like the maps like a maniac, and also like you can see whenever you reach bosses, if you reach the act bosses, those very difficult bosses, the one that have lots of health, yeah, you're going to be one-shotting them. So this is very broken. Although, however, I'm hoping that this is not going to be nerfed, because to some extent you can see we have to make concessions. Like it requires quite a bit of preparation for us to be able to achieve all of these crazy little shenanigans. It's not like something, and it's also not something like you're going to be able to be spamming run. As you can see in here, for example, when you're fighting two bosses on this little clip, if you kill one and then you're stuck with the other one, like they have like a second phase, for example, you're stuck with that boss until your Hammer of the Gods recharges and you can kill it. But yeah, it basically all revolves around using that specific cooldown. And hopefully, if enemies actually die fast, this is also that. For example, if you're fighting something that has like two phases, then maybe you can use your health potions with the first phase if you don't feel comfortable spending your Hammer of the Gods on one of the other phases. And then once you reach the one that actually gives you trouble, then you one-tap the Hammer of the Gods, and yeah, the boss is that you don't really have to worry about it anymore. Anyways, if you like the content and like and super appreciate it, and also you think you're a gorgeous, beautiful person, you're in the gorgeous, beautiful person, subscribe to the channel, join the Discord, have a beautiful day, and goodbye.